Good morning. My name is George Wall. I'm a 1958 graduate of the Wake Forest School of Medicine, and I've been asked to say a few words about the medical school, the way it was then. One of our most famous professors, Dr. Richard Masland. A few words about Grayland, which you will be visiting later. We can call this a little fireside chat because I'm sure many of you would rather be sitting by the fire like I am now. But again, I was a graduate of Wake Forest School of Medicine. I am a graduate of Wake Forest School of Medicine in 1958, and at the time it was known, and I'm sure many of you have heard it referred to as the Bowman Gray School of Medicine, but we'll get into that a little bit later. First off, a little background on Wake Forest in general. Wake Forest began in 1834, was organized in 1834, and it got its name by being located in the forest of Wake County, North Carolina, which, for those of you that don't know, is in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. Now, at the time, it included a 2-year medical school. So, but fast forward to, say, 1939, the Bowman Gray Foundation here in Winston-Salem, or there in Winston-Salem, offered to have Wake Forest Medical School move to Winston-Salem and affiliate with the North Carolina Baptist Hospital, thereby providing the 2 years clinical experience that was required for an MD degree. Again, the incentive to move was through the Bowman Gray Foundation. And again, at that time, it was named the Bowman Gray School of Medicine. Bowman Gray having been the president of R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. So the med school came in 41. I came along in 54 as a freshman, and at the time the school was maybe 10-15% the size it is today. Relatively small classes. We had an enrollment of class size of about 50, whereas now I think it's upwards of 200. And now, to move forward, one of my famous professors was Dr. Richard Masland, whom I'm sure most of you know. Was an early pioneer in the field of dyslexia. He was world famous for his studies on childhood development. On a personal note, Dr. Masland was largely responsible for my being where I am today, and probably for your being in Winston-Salem. Again, he was noted for a very large longitudinal study of childhood development. And back to my personal experience, he was one of the 3 professors who interviewed me for admittance to medical school. At the time, I had had only 3 years at Wake Forest, and they had an early graduate program. But anyway, I was interviewed by 3 different professors, and the consensus was that I was a bit young and immature, and they suggested I stay at Wake Forest for another year, and they assured me of admission. Well, being sort of impatient as I have been known to be, I sort of insisted that I be allowed to come on after 3 years at Wake Forest, and through some indirect contacts made an appeal to Dr. Masland, who said, okay, come on. Now, Dr. Masland, again, was very world famous, but at the same time, he was very down to earth, very kind, very friendly, a favorite of the students, and again, made quite a name for himself, having been there probably since the school was founded in 41 or soon thereafter. And again, through his studies, but later, soon after I graduated in 58, as I recall, he moved on to the National Institute of Health, where he continued his studies and research, and actually was awarded a presidential citation by President Kennedy. Later he left the NIH and became professor of neurology at Columbia University, and as a matter of fact, God rest his soul, only passed away about 10 years or so ago. So anyway, now to move on to Grayland, which many of you will see later on, was the estate of Bowman Gray, and as I recall, it was completed in the late 30s on some 80 acres of land right across Ronaldo Road from the Reynolds estate. And Bowman Gray apparently only lived there for a couple of years because he later died at sea and off the coast of Norway, and was buried there. Later, after the seed money for the medical school, again in the 39, 40, 41, so forth, the Bowman Gray family, that is Bowman Gray Jr., Gordon Gray, etc., donated Grayland to Wake Forest, and it became an academic psychiatric institution of Bowman Gray School of Medicine, later Wake Forest. Along about the mid-60s, early 60s, the psychiatric hospital was moved back to the Baptist Hospital, back to the main campus, and then Grayland became temporary student housing, and then later, as it's known today, as the Conference Center. But back in those days, I remember very well as a student helping to administer electroshock therapy as well as insulin hypoglycemic shock therapy. I think that's about sums it up. Appreciate your attention. I'd like to give thanks to my technical support and my makeup artist, Billy Olive.